We are living in unprecedented times. No matter what industry you come from, we must all review, rethink, and reinvent ourselves. Are you an entrepreneur that is trying to adapt your business to the new norm? Well, you are listening to the 2020 Entrepreneur, a podcast that will motivate you and have you think outside of the box. My name is Hugo Almeida, and with over 30 years of being an entrepreneur, I am here to share and inspire you with my experiences and help invent a new you. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to a new episode of T20E World. Hugo here, and today I've got a good friend back on our podcast, Johnny Ruppert. Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm so happy that you came back, and we are going to talk about something that it actually is extremely important in everyone's life, not only to the youth, but even the adults, and that is how do we learn to deal with pressures and stresses in life, right, John?
Yeah. It's a critical component of everybody's life. I don't care the age that you are; everybody feels it.
Totally. I mean, it's something that after this podcast, think about it. Think about every aspect of your life. I don't care if you're in sports, you're virtually learning, you're working, you're dealing with issues at home, or someone's not feeling well, health issues. I hope this podcast assists you in identifying and improving the way you deal with the pressures and the stresses. Because the reality of it is, John, they don't go away, man.
No.
They don't.
No, they just change.
Yeah,
they
change.
never go away.
It's like an ocean, man.
Yeah.
The waves are constant.
And it's also deep. And it seems like it goes on forever.
That's right.
Right? I think it's important, and I like how you mentioned that before, about the way to listen to this episode, right?
Yeah.
Because this episode really, the idea of it is more about identifying.
Yeah.
Right? Because, look, what works for me may not work for everybody else. And what works for you may not work for everybody else. But the truth of the matter is, even with everything that we're going through today, right? And the unique challenges of this past 18 months or so is, look, stress and pressure, it's real. Like, we can't fake our way around it. It is real. Identify it.
Absolutely.
Work with it.
As a matter of fact, the more I'm thinking about this, John, this might be like one of the foundation podcasts to all the other ones we have done.
Yeah.
This is like setting down the cement base for the house you're going to build on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, this is everything.
Yeah, it is the foundation, ultimately, of your life.
No doubt. So let's talk about it. I think first is really, and I know we chit-chatted about this earlier, is understanding, really identifying maybe what's triggering, maybe what triggers these stresses or the pressures throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
There's always issues that are coming up on a regular basis. Some of these times are just one-time stresses. Maybe it's an exam you're preparing for. And then there's those ongoing stressful events that you got to deal with, right?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to understand, Hugh.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody feels stress.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. I do not care who you are. You will feel some type of discomfort or stress or pressure in some ways almost daily, right? But ultimately, it's about how we choose to interact and how we choose to respond to those stresses. Because a stressor may not affect me as much as it will affect somebody else, or the vice versa,
Absolutely.
Right? Where, look, they may be able to get through a stress or a pressure in a moment's notice, and I might sit on it a little bit more, right? And it might kind of weigh on me. And the worst thing in the world I can do is ignore it.
No doubt.
Right? And you talked about stresses and pressures in our everyday life, being it something to do with health, something to do with school, with work, money. Money is a big one.
Oh, it's huge.
Right?
Finances is always a major issue.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned through the gift of kind of working with other people, working with mentors, working with people who are in similar positions to me, or let's say somebody in that, the generation before me who have gone through this, first and foremost, let's identify it. Look, what exactly is it that we're worried about? And when we do that, right, the first thing that we do is we can't fool ourselves. We can't sit there and say there's nothing wrong. I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous about, being able to make payroll, being able to sell something, being able to pay my mortgage. Look, it's okay to feel nervous, but what do you do with it?
Exactly.
Right? What do you do with it?
Well, it's so true, John, and what you're saying is because the first way to tackle any pressure, any stress truly is identifying it, understanding it, and then really addressing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always say, right, I don't worry. I call them the stupid stresses. I'm like, forget that. Forget stupid stresses because we create stress internally, but they're sometimes so silly that there are things that we got to understand internally that those things are just like, let them just blow by, man, because we got enough things on our plate throughout a day in our lives that we really got to tackle. So stupid stresses, get rid of them, man. Yeah. So identify those and just dust them off the table automatically. Those are just silly. You're wasting your energy on dealing with just a stupid stress that's going to just overwhelm you throughout the day, because then you got all your other stuff that piles on.
Yeah, you do. And look, because we talked about this the other day, and I kind of jotted down some notes, and you did as well. We talked about them, and look, funny enough, our notes are largely the same.
Absolutely.
Right? In a lot of ways, I viewed you as a mentor in my career of, hey, this is a way to do things, right? You were all, like I said in the last time I was here, so entrepreneurial. That is
Thanks, John.
your mind. My mind works a little bit differently.
Sure.
I will tell you right now, you are much braver than I am, right?
And I'm a risk taker.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
You are much more comfortable taking that risk than I am. But if I sit there and say, why aren't I like you? Why can't I be like you? You know what? You know why I'm not? Because I'm not you.
Yeah.
Right? And you just talked about, getting rid of the little stupid stressors.
And that is one of them.
Right? And in these few points that I wrote down, one of them was a way to get through it, remove the noise.
Yeah.
Remove
that's
it.
Right. That's right.
And I talk about remove the noise in the sense of pressure. Best way to think about it with remove the noise actually comes from at the end of any game show. Right? At the end of any of these events, they ask you a question or have you perform a task, and what do they play? Yeah. What does the contestant and everybody at home hear? They hear that music, right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It becomes...
It builds.
It does.
It builds.
And it builds an intensity, and it builds the stress.
Pressure and the stresses. And
when you play these games, people are like, oh my God.
That's right.
Look, press the mute button.
Yeah.
Watch a show like that. Press the mute button to think about the question. Yeah. I'm telling you, you're going to feel different because that noise pressure is gone, right? And then the second thing that you mentioned in there is our brain has a very unique way of adding things to stress. It's how it works. For example, somebody may say, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do it by next Tuesday. And not only do I want this amount, I want twice. Watch how good I can do.
Oh, man.
Now, do you see what you just did to yourself?
You created your own pressures.
You're going
to stress the shit out of yourself.
Yes. It's not just about conquering that goal.
Yeah.
What did we just do? Yeah. We turned it up a notch.
Oh, yeah.
Set an expectation with that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when we use the word stupid stress,
yeah.
I prefer just to use the word stress.
Yeah.
Stupid or smart stress, it's all just stress.
Yeah. Now, listen, a lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, right, we're always going after it. So we do build that stress. Mm-hmm. So we'll put goals out there, sometimes extremely aggressive goals. But nothing is wrong with that as long as you learn to identify and understand really how is it that I'm going to deal with all the pressures I just created. That's a different story, right? Because you understand what you're doing. Well, another thing is what you just mentioned, right? You're creating and you're building all these stresses internally, and then you're bringing it up another notch, but you really have not identified it internally, and now you're really going to be overwhelmed. Come next week, before the day that you set in your calendar, you're going to be stressing.
Yeah.
So it's so important. John, let's talk about one of the ways, right, that we can improve how to deal with this pressure and these stresses that are created. Now, again, we just mentioned some of them we create, some of them we're living with, right? Mm-hmm. We have no control over. But one of the things I always say is when we do understand pressures and stresses is organizing them. Mm-hmm. Really, it comes down to organization.
Yeah.
Maybe making a list. Which ones can you deal with first? Don't overwhelm the brain, right?
Yeah.
You overwhelm your brain, your day is going to be overwhelming already.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the phrase that has been given to me and I've used with other people and I use with myself on a regular basis is, you know, look, you handle the stress or it's going to handle you.
Yeah.
There's no other way. Look, if there is something there that you feel pressure on, you feel stressed on, that you want to take care of, if you don't set to handle it, it's going to handle you. Totally. And it's going to come out any way that it wants. You can't control that. And I think ultimately the best way to handle stress and pressure comes down to like the foundation of wisdom.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh,
it's all about wisdom. And that wisdom a lot of times branches further out than just yourself. Look, work with mentors. If you don't have a mentor, find one because they are so helpful. Now, with wisdom, it will show you and kind of give you that ability to recognize the position that you're in, right? You can't fool yourself and sit there and say everything is fine because all you're doing is fooling yourself.
No doubt.
Look, what's the problem, right? Are you not being successful selling something? Is the way that you're going about your education not working for you? Are you struggling in these things? If so, let's identify it. What exactly is it that's not working? And you talked about organization, Hugh. Think about it like your desk. Right? Your desktop. If you have a million folders open, the dad folder, the uncle folder, the work folder, the charity folder,
it's and all,
if you have all of these folders open at once, it becomes unmanageable.
Completely.
So look, the stress of, Hugo the entrepreneur, when you're at home, close that folder, put it away.
Exactly.
Close it, right? I've been homeschooling my son now for the better part of 6 months, right? Look, we wake up, we go in the office together, I sit there over top of him, and then sometimes I feel like he's not listening, right? I try and get him to create a list. Let's go through these things one by one. And what's happening is I'm trying to teach him the way I do things. And ultimately, I realized, Hugh, I got to work with him here.
That's right.
And
he's got to figure it out and learn what works best for him.
And then I have to adjust that to him, not him to me. Yep. We have to work together on these things. Absolutely. And that came with working with a mentor and wisdom.
One of the things you just said, and it's so important, right, is understanding not to do too much at one time. That's so important because sometimes we think, we got superpowers and then we can take on everything, and it's not true. It becomes overwhelming because we got too much on our plate at once. The other thing, Johnny, that I always say is, you know what, and I do this often, is sometimes when I feel like I do have a few folders open, I try not to keep 10 of them open, right? Just a couple. But sometimes, you know what, it is good to take a break, man. Just freaking walk away.
Yeah.
Give yourself some space and some time just to kind of zone out. You know what I mean?
Ultimately, Hugh, it's the advice we give others
that
we never follow.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I could write an entire book on the advice I'll give somebody else, but I won't do it. Right? Like, look, take an afternoon off. And when you take it off, don't be a hero.
No. That's right.
I work for a British company, and on my call the other day, my director who's out of the UK basically said, I don't understand you guys. You're off on vacation or on, time off, and I'm getting emails from you.
That's right. So
Turn
true.
your stuff off.
We are definitely programmed here. Definitely.
Right? And I got to tell you, this guy is so incredibly organized and polite.
Structure. Yep.
Yeah, and absolutely. I'm sitting there going, he gets all of this stuff done, and he does step away, right? And yet I'm not stepping away, and I feel less than him. Yeah. And I'm like, he's doing something right, and I am doing something wrong.
Hey, so John, one thing we were kind of chatting about how dealing with pressures and stresses, it's massive, right? It's about life. And it's about identifying because there's going to be a stress in every vertical of your day. Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, we always talk about sports, right? Going back to the sports days. You're a baseball guy, I'm a soccer guy. Actually, I remember having this conversation with my son when he kind of went up the ladder, played at Penn State.
That next level.
He did that academy and we got to the championships. And I was like on the sidelines, right? Proud father, ex-player, coach, etc. And I was just like, how did you feel walking on that pitch? You know, you go on the Red Bulls field, and how does it feel, man? He's like, whoa. Because, you just expect, you're watching, you're like, oh, dude, that's cool. He's getting on the field. He's ready to play his game. But there's so much more building in his brain of an athlete, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a baseball player. You've been to those championship games. You know that internal build, man, that stress that we create when you're getting up at bat or something, and you know this is bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, you know?
Look, when I was younger, Hugh, I'm going to call these happy accidents, right? I'm on deck. Let's say that there's runners second and third, 2 out. And, look, I wanted to be the guy in the batter's box, but I didn't want to be the guy who failed in the batter's box. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, that's part of life.
It is.
Yeah,
but,
we figured that out the hard way.
Like, let's just call it during high school. It's like I would get up to bat, and ultimately my ability would get me the hit or not get me the hit versus what the pitcher is. And then when I got into college, again, this is the point where I think I really kind of started growing. And I started realizing that, look, ultimately, the success or the failure of that at bat is a culmination of everything you've done up until that point.
Yep.
Right? I can't step into the batter's box and all of a sudden go through 20,000 swings in my mind to develop a better swing.
Yeah.
The higher the level I got, Hugh, the calmer I was when I would go to do it, because again, it's not ego that's telling me I'm the man. I'm the man.
That's right.
I can do this. I got this. This guy's a chump. I got him. I got him. Really what it comes down to is confidence. Look, I've taken 50,000 swings this week. And look, I'm just picking a number, right? But I've put in all this work. I'm either going to get a hit or get on base, or depending on what the pitcher does, or I'm not. I can't really focus more. I can't try harder.
That's right.
My effort ultimately is capped.
Yep.
Right? It's a culmination of everything I've done up until that point that really determines the success or the failure.
Yep.
And when we talk about pressure, I didn't feel pressure when I stepped into that box. Where I felt pressure was in all the practice that I would do. The preparation, the notes, the meetings, understanding the technology and the customer. That's when I feel nervous.
Absolutely.
Not in the room, not in the box, not on the pitch.
It's funny because previous episode, one of my friends, Wilson Kriegel, he talks about the principles of being consistent. Mm-hmm. Consistency in everything you do in life. Yeah. He uses actually baseball as an example.
Good man.
Yeah, he does. No, he says life isn't really about hitting all home runs, man. You got to focus about getting on base, man. Get on base.
Yeah.
If you think about life that way, guys, it makes so much sense. Now, we're using sports as an example here, but shit, you could apply this to your work. You could apply this to your marriage. You could apply this to how you're dealing with mental health issues. I mean, again, the pressures and the stresses, it's so important. Identify it. Identify what's triggering, what's causing this. Is it an internal stress? Is it an external stress? Organize yourself. And then, Johnny, let's talk a little bit about how do you address some of these causes, because I'm always a big fan of, listen, meet it head on sometimes. If it's finances and if it's work or students or coping with work or homework.
any of the things.
Yeah, man. Deal with it. How do we address it? How do we learn to kind of take it on and maybe kind of structure something so that, we start putting a little check next to it like it's done? Because immediately you're going to reduce the amount of pressure that has been built up. And that is critical in life.
Yeah, you just used the word critical right there, and I thought that was humorous because one of the things I was going to say was, look, sometimes stress and pressure reaches critical mass, right? To that
red alert.
Yeah, and it's like you eventually reach that. I think the word is event horizon. I'm not nearly as smart as I wish I were, but eventually it has this gravity to it, and it sucks everything into it.
Oh, it does.
Look, I think it's ultimately important to identify things as soon as humanly possible. But a lot of times when you're in that position, Hugh,
it's hard.
You can't. You do not.
You don't see or think clearly.
You don't.
No.
And you don't have the perspective necessary to be able to see these things.
And at that point, John, you and I kind of mentioned this earlier. That's the point. Sometimes it is okay to ask for help.
Oh, God.
Dude, come on. We have to be bigger than that. We have to be okay and understand that everybody in life is dealing with their own pressures, their own stresses. Listen, guys, there comes a point in time where it's okay to ask for a little assistance.
Because you're not the only one who's ever felt like this. You're not the only one who feels like this right now.
Yeah.
Right? And even though it could be humbling to be able to say to somebody, hey, Hugh, like, I'm struggling.
Yep.
Let me pick your brain for a minute.
You know you're going to, I'm always going to make time for
yeah.
Somebody asked me that question. Let's sit down now. For me, that's priority.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people think that way. You know what
That's
I mean?
why mentors are so important.
We talk about it all the time on this podcast. Finding mentors, surrounding yourself with positive people, with positive energy is so positive in life, man. It only helps you.
It does. And that energy that you said is important, but it's also sometimes their perspective that's just so important. You know, the first time I asked somebody to be a mentor, it was a little bit like asking somebody to be my friend. Hey, here's a note. I'm going to pass it to you on the desk. You know, do you want to be my friend? Yes or no? Please check the box and hand it back over. But ultimately, I just said, hey, listen, you know, you have something that I want. You have a way of approaching things, thinking of things, acting about things. Now, some people I knew well, some people I really didn't. Now, some people said, well, I don't really have the time to commit all of this stuff to you. And my simple theme was, hey, how about I call you every 3 months and we just talk.
That's right.
And I prepare a quick list of questions I want to go through, and it can even just be a conversation. Sometimes when it comes to your everyday life, it could be a matter of having a therapist, having a social worker.
And that's fine.
Right? Look, I
You
got to
need
tell
somebody
you,
to open up to.
you know, you and I have talked about some of the challenges I've gone through personally in my life.
Jeez,
you know,
Johnny, yeah.
You know, that have been so like gut-wrenching to me
No,
that, you know, look, hopefully we get into it one day on this podcast, because I'd love to say that I've challenged every single day I could. And, you know, I fought like hell every day. But the truth of the matter is, there are days in there where I'm just like, I'm overly human. I am overly human. I feel things harder and stronger than other people do. I must be different. Something must be wrong with me. And ultimately, I got through that by getting out of my head and talking to somebody about it.
So important. So important. Listen, to all our listeners out there, I'm just going to throw this out to you, because this has also helped me. And I have given this advice to many other people. No matter what situation you are going through, okay? Remember this. Yes, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Listen, if you're in an airplane with a lot of turbulence, the plane eventually is going to land. So there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Listen, it might be painful for a short time. It will get better, guys. It will get better. And this is just my little bit of advice of how I have dealt with situations, right? Because there's all levels. And each one of those levels causes stresses and pressures inside. Now, Johnny, I know John for many years, and I also know what he's referring to about the challenges he has dealt with. I mean, I can't even compare myself to what he has gone through, you know? And someday, John, I hope you do come back, and I would love to talk about that, because
the whole Anchors conversation.
The Anchors conversation is
Yeah.
freaking off the hook valuable, man. So listen, let's talk about just addressing it, man. Just to, you know, it's so important to understand, identify, structure, and organize it, right? And John, what about at the end of the day, when we tried everything, there's certain times that you just got to say, I got to just accept the things you can't change, man. I mean, think about this. Sometimes we rack our brains and overstress ourselves with something that's just not going to change, man.
Yeah. You know, I've spent a lot of this pandemic reading, right? And one of the books I've gone back to, and it's become a part of me, is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Oh
right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
God. Yeah.
You know, the second book in there begins, you know, basically realize every single day you are going to meet people who are short-tempered, ill-mannered, and accept it. Because ultimately, do you know what you have control of? Basically nothing, other than
That's right.
how you respond to things. Look, you yourself alone cannot determine if you are successful. There will be things that you will have to overcome. Some fair, some not. It's just the way that it is.
It's life.
But how you respond to something is up to you.
Absolutely.
And the best way to describe that is when, you know, look, I have little kids and they'll be like, oh, he made me hit him, right? Or he said something and then I hit him. It was his fault. whoa, 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 whoa.
Pointing the finger.
It is up to you how you choose to respond to something. And I know it's hard. I know it. And sometimes that choice, Hugh, is, holy crap, I made a mistake.
Accepting it.
Yes, I made a mistake here. I need to cut bait and run. And look, if you get a chance, read that book.
Yeah, I will.
Read it
I
again.
will. Yep.
You know, the last piece on the book I'm reading right now, Thoughts of a Philosophical Fighter Pilot by Jim Stockdale.
Oh, yeah.
It's a combination of all of the addresses and speeches and commencement talks he gave or lectures, and his philosophy in handling stress in the crucible and the pressure cooker is just, they're fantastic.
And for those that do not know who he is, fighter pilot that got shot down over Vietnam and was a prisoner of war. I was blessed to kind of meet Captain Charles Plum many years back, who was also in the same the camp, in Vietnam.
And we say camp. We'll call it more like a torture center.
Torture center, yeah.
But look, even so, it's the approach people take to, I look at these people and my thoughts are they're greater than I'll ever be.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I wish I had magic answers for somebody. I wish that I had some type of influence or ability to reach people on the other end of this and say things are going to be all right.
Yeah.
You're going to get through this. But unfortunately, I'm just me, man.
Yeah.
Like,
That's...
I try and be good. Try to reach as many people as I can. I enjoy most working with kids.
Absolutely.
And like developing young adults. And ultimately, it's going to be all right.
Yeah. God, deep stuff here. Again, it's such an important topic that we're discussing today. And my brain is just racing right now 1,000,000 miles an hour because I'm just thinking of all the examples, literally, that I could probably spend another 2 to 3 hours just talking about examples and how to deal with that. Pressures and stresses, it's vital. And I'm going to emphasize this again, because if you want to be a better entrepreneur, if you want to be a better student, a better human being, just general, everyday life lessons and activities that we go through, you got to learn to be able to take on your pressures and your stresses, identify them. What's triggering this? Come on. Let's organize this.
Yeah, I read this one piece, and I'm extrapolating on it a little bit, and I'm also I'm not changing the context, but more like just kind of putting words in the right order.
Sure.
It's ultimately, look, man, you can't stop doing something the moment you feel the slightest bit of discomfort, right? Hey, I want to start a business, right? Or I want to grow my business. Hey, I want to learn this. I want to do this skill. If you stop, the moment it starts to become hard and it pulls up that, my wife and I call it the finger in your belly button feeling. If you ever touch, where you're like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. It feels a little bit weird. Look, if you stop then, right, that fear is going to be replaced with guilt because you will look back on it, right? And you will have that feeling of, I wish I would have done it. And you can't say, I'm just going to tough through it. I mean, what does tough even look like, right? Handle it.
That's right.
Make a list. That's the most simple thing you can do, too. Make a list.
John, that's so important. Again, I'm going back and I'm being repetitive about this, but understanding this topic is so critical because if you want to move on in life, advance in your career, become a better student, better athlete, just deal with businesses, entrepreneurship, anything that you choose in life, the quicker that you understand yourself and how you as the individual deal with pressures and stresses, the better you will be as yourself.
Yeah.
You will be able to tackle things so much better. You know what I mean? Again, it's stepping out of that comfort zone sometimes, you know what I mean? And taking things head on. We avoid things. We talked about this, John. Many times when we know that this is a stressful situation, what do? We run away.
Yeah, nobody wants to feel it.
Nobody wants to deal with it at that moment, right?
Well, even if nobody wants to feel it.
That's right.
Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable.
So let's avoid it. Let's avoid it. Let's walk away from it. Let's talk about it tomorrow. How about tomorrow? And then tomorrow comes, we push it off another week. Listen, it's so important. It's so important to take it on. Try to change, try to tweak, try to organize and structure after you identify what's triggering these stresses and these pressures. And trust me when I tell you, you're going to be better. You're going to be a better human and for yourself and your career. You will
come out of this better than when you went in. And although you may not see it at that moment,
you're right about that.
I gave advice to my buddy the other day. Like, I don't envy the position you're in right now.
Yeah.
But I've been there before.
So that's reality, and then you're backing that up.
Yeah, and I am telling you, you are going to come out of this better than you were before, and I am going to help you do it.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. And to our listeners out there, I hope this podcast in particular on how to deal with pressures and stresses truly, truly helps you on understanding, identifying, and dealing with them a lot better. Johnny, as we wrap up this episode, and I always ask this, and I'm going to ask you again, leave our listeners with that one tidbit of advice for today.
Look, you and I talked about this before. I enjoy writing, right? I think somehow I'm a frustrated, a frustrated writer who has just trouble, completing the books that I've begun. And what I'm going to do from this is, because I actually wrote on this topic pretty good length, I'm going to share that with you, Hugh. Yeah. And, look, put it up on the website.
Put our notes together.
Put it up on your website. It'll be kind of a look into how I handle and deal with stress and pressure.
That'd be awesome. I would love to.
Ultimately, for me, it's about preparation.
Absolutely.
It is about preparation to get through that stress. It won't help you not feel stressed, but it will help you not to suffer from it and how to work within it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that advice, John, and very important. So to all our listeners out there, once again here, thank you for tuning in to T20E World. It is Johnny Ruppert here and Hugo, and we are checking out.